Hello everybody, I am Ben from Team Panic, and way back, or maybe it was last week, at the start of the year, we were having some issues with Annie's weapon system. We took this to a couple of events and we just kept having belt slip. I changed the pulleys a couple of times and just things didn't work. To the point that I was essentially going to change up the entire design for the weapon system. Everything in under here was about to go, and I was just messing around with Annie before I was doing that, just kind of looking at a few bits and pieces, and I found something. I think this might be the problem. So if we have a look at this weapon system, you can see right now that while it does kind of turn with the belt and everything, the pulleys don't turn together all that well. I mean, there is the problem that this belt is actually pretty worn down because it was in a couple of fights and it did get worn away, and you can see some of the remnants of that around the edges and stuff. But what I found was there's a lot of slop in here, and you can see if you watch this pulley, you can see, I'm not really sure how well this is showing up on camera, but as I pull down to tighten this belt, oh, there you go, you can see it a lot there. You can see the pulley, watch the gap between the two pulleys. They get a lot closer together as I try and tighten that belt up. Now, if I flip Annie the other way around, this plate is the problem. You can see if you watch the gap here, I can push this plate all the way down and deflect that in, which, because the motor is hanging directly off of that, pulls the tip of the motor in towards this pulley, and that's where this belt slip is coming from. As the motor was trying to wind up the weapon, there was tension on that belt. It was pushing the two pulleys together, and this ABS printed plate, which did work for a little while, eventually let go. I never changed this plate over, so it's weakened over time, and it's caused this issue, which I've been facing. So that's really not good. The other thing that's not good is that this plate shouldn't actually flex this much, but actually if we have a look at the other side, and yeah, this is the other thing I want to change. There's so much wiring mess in here, but if you have a look right where that plug was obscuring you just then, you can see that the actual motor shroud in here is kind of raggedy, and it's because the print failed. The print kind of warped up at the edges, which means that there is room for this plate to flex down now, because it's not actually going into anything, like it's flexing into open air. There should be plastic under there to prop it back up and stop it from doing that. Although, looking at this, we might actually be getting a little bit of flexing in the base plate as well. However, changing this plate out should help us fix that weapon drive issue. Also, by changing the bolt positions here, we can actually push the motor back a little bit more and just get a tiny little bit more tension on the belt, which will help us with our slipping issues that we've been experiencing. So a couple of things of note. This print failed way worse than I originally thought it had. Obviously, I'd seen that at some point, but it's been a long time since I've actually released this motor, and yeah, that's pretty bad. We definitely need to redo that. But also, this motor is horrific, and I have no idea if I'm going to be able to get this on camera or not, because it's quite small detail. But the actual pulley teeth here are also worn and kind of bad. They've got a little concavity to them, which means that they have also melted a little bit in some point in the past couple of fights, which is really not good. So this has definitely not been gripping properly, and I definitely need to replace this. I do have a couple of replacements, but once again, I haven't changed anything that I'm holding in, I think, 2 or 3 events. So yeah, the last time I was having motor issues or belt issues, I really should have looked at this as well, but I did not. I looked at the other pulley and not this one. So obvious quick tip here, check both pulleys in any pulley equation when you're getting slipping. So I'm going to swap this out, and we're going to swap this out, and we're going to see how we go. So here's the piece. It is exactly what it needs to be, essentially. So we've got the guard that will go down and touch the base, and I don't actually have any print errors in this one, which is really nice. But you can see that I've printed in place the motor mount, and everything is all just one rock solid piece. So there's very little bend in this way at all. So if I grab it where the bolt holes are and try and bend it, because there's so much plastic and in a ring shape, it just does not want to bend. I'm a little bit sus about keeping this as a printed part because this is just PLA, so if the motor gets hot, it's possible that we could melt through this, but this I think will be a good start. I do have another idea if we put this in and find out that it does actually bend a little bit under stress and strain. I've also found a new belt and also a new pulley so that we can get this going. But I need to drill some holes in this because apparently this one didn't get holes drilled in it. So that's all right, we can do that at some point. But the first step is going to be to replace this whole mess, which actually also means removing the weapon because the weapon also holds in this, or the weapon axle also holds in this. So lots of bits and pieces to move. So it's in place. It looks a little bit bizarre being pure red like this in the middle of Annie. I will definitely need to reprint this. If this is where we're going, it would have to be reprinted in the neon green ABS that I use for other things. But this seems pretty solid, to be honest. There is a slight centering issue here, which I don't know what's caused that, but the motor is now slightly this way, just a small amount. So I don't really know what's caused that because theoretically this part and the part that is on top here should be exactly the same, but they're not because it's caused this centering issue. But you can see that even with the two pulleys that have the broken teeth on them, these line up really, really well now and turn together. However, there is a lot of friction in here. So I'm not sure if that's because I've got my bearing stuck up kind of wrong or if the belt is too tight. The belt seems pretty good. But look, you can see that when I push on the belt to try and tighten it, I get movement out of my motor stack up. So there's a small amount of wobble in there somewhere, which is not good because of course that wobble is the type of thing that we're trying to get rid of. So I need to do something about that. I think I also need to work out why this is quite so tight. I think it might be to do with how tight I've got the weapon tightened down. That might be to do with it. But of course I like to make sure that the weapon is quite tight because otherwise you get all sorts of issues. But that's loosened that off, and yeah, that was what that was. That's a lot freer in there now. Okay, cool. So yeah, with the weapon loosened off quite a lot, that actually works a lot better. Now, like I said, I'm using two bad pulleys in here right now, so we need to fix that and put two good pulleys in here, and hopefully that solves most of our issues. But like I said, that little bit of wobble in here is still kind of worrying, so we might do something else about that. Cool, so Annie's got her new weapon stack-ups in. It's a little bit tight in places. I think something isn't quite perfectly centered. One of these two just isn't quite right. I've also cheated a little bit. This is just a PLA pulley for now. We will print this again in an ABS at a later date. But for now, for testing, this should be totally fine. And it seems to be okay. I think we'll be able to get a spin up. Like I said, there is a tight point somewhere, but I think we'll be fine with that. Because I have unplugged the motor, I don't know which direction this is going to spin. So I wanted to throw the disc on, but I think I'll end up throwing the bow tie blade on, and that should work out pretty well for us, I think. Also, I'm a little bit interested to see how tapped directly into PLA is going to go, because I've tapped directly into ABS before for this weapon pulley and it's been totally fine, but I've never actually tried to spin a weapon tapped directly into PLA. So this could be interesting, but that is what we're going to do next. We're going to try and hit something, and something as hard as I've got. Well, maybe not quite that hard. Maybe we'll start by hitting a 3D print, and we'll see how we go. Because I do want to stress test this a little bit, see if I get some belt slipping. Because of course, that is what we're here to try and find out, is whether or not a new top plate is actually going to fix that. Now, I did say that I'm getting a tiny little bit of wobble still in this, and I think that might be in the motor itself, but if it's not, I do have some carbon fiber here which I will use to replace this top flat section, what was originally the green here, because that is going to be nice and rigid and actually probably pretty light. But I will probably do all of that off camera. We'll get this tested first and see if this is the way to go. And then once we know that, we can then work on getting it lighter and more rigid and all of that kind of stuff. All right, I'm going to finish bolting in this weapon. Or maybe not. Annie seems to be on a little bit of a lean right now. So if I spin the weapon round, I get rubbing there. But if I spin the weapon 180 degrees, I don't get rubbing there. So something is off. And we're hitting the ground on one side, and I think it's actually to do with these frame rails. You can see over here, this back corner looks like it's pushed in a little bit, and that must have been from a hit at some point, but I literally have no idea when that possibly could have been. That doesn't actually make all that much sense to me, so I'm just going to double check that that's not just like a trick. So this is interesting. So you can see on this side, we are squared up and we are totally fine. Everything is great. On this side, the aluminium angle is still square. We've got a bend in the base plate itself. So what's happened is that along the length of this aluminium, it's totally straight, but it's just kind of tweaked just a little bit, which means that this wheel is actually sitting high. It's sitting too far up, which is where we're getting our scrimping and scraping from. So it's worse than I thought, actually. So if we look at the front here, you can see what we've got is we've got a section of box tube, aluminium box tube, which is where the weapon mounts through. And I've cut the edges down so that I can mount up the front plate and, so that it's all lighter and everything like that. But it's bent. So the actual front plate, like this bottom section, where I've weakened it off, where I've cut all of this extra material out of it, it's bent up that way. So what's happened is I believe I must have got a hit on a wheel at some point, and I really don't remember this happening, but I must have had a hit on the wheel, and the force of that push has been kind of in this way. And realistically, the only thing keeping all of this from bending up and away was this tiny little piece of 2mm aluminium at the front here. So that wasn't very good, basically. And it has bent. It's done exactly what it was going to do. I honestly did not realize that we got into a hit that was that massive. But yeah, the whole robot is tweaked and twisted. So as much as I didn't want to do it, we're going to have to go for an Annie version 5. This can't work anymore. We're going to have to replace this whole front section, probably keep just a straight piece of tube all the way along it, I reckon, because that should work. But that's going to mean, changing everything else up about this design. I want to change up how I mount these side plates, what these materials are made out of. I want to have an actual proper mount across the back that keeps everything quite rigid, so it's not just one point at the front that has to hold the whole frame together. And while I'm at it, I'm probably going to redesign this too, because, you know, I guess I might as well now that I'm here. I've seen what this design's weaknesses are, and it's time for an upgrade, I think. Drat. Well, I guess thank you for coming on this journey with me. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video, despite the fact that it's definitely not where I thought we were going to end up. I really do need to get back to the drawing board now, so look out for an Annie version 5 video, I guess in the next, you know, not too long, because we really do need to get Annie back up and running again. So yeah, we'll have to get something going pretty soon here. Yeah, anyway, like I said, I hope you guys enjoyed this one, and I will see you in the next video.